Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to my 3 takeaways from the Michael Chandler interview this past Monday. I hope you guys really enjoyed the live podcast. I don't know if you could tell any difference in the sense of the questions that I asked, my comfortability, or anything like that, but I would love to hear your feedback on the interview and if you enjoyed it and what your 3 takeaways from Michael was, or maybe just your one takeaway that you know something he said really struck a chord with you and you're going to be able to start implementing that particular insight or that tool into your life right now. I really love how he was so open about his own failures. He really talks about his real life situations, how he moved from California and adopted a son, all bang, 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 started a business, bang, bang, bang. Just so many real life scenarios that I feel like a lot of people can probably relate to on a high level outside of the cage fighting and everything like that. It is a little bit harder to relate to. So I think it's really powerful how he talked about all those different things in terms of his losses, in terms of adopting his son, in terms of his relationship with Bree. Super cool stuff. So if you liked the episode, make sure you leave a rating and review. If you're on the Apple Podcast app, all you got to do is scroll to the bottom, click write a review. On iTunes, just click write a review as well. Would love to hear y'all's feedback from Michael and the live podcast interview and everything like that. But for now, let's get right into my 3 takeaways. Number 1 is be around people who scare you. This is one of the things that he said relatively early on in the interview, and I thought it was so powerful because it's so much easier said than done to be around mentors or be around people who scare you, who are better than you in certain areas of your life, so they can really give you the honest feedback. And I think that's one thing that I've probably said before, and I've done a little bit, but I think it's one thing I hesitate to do a little bit because it really does take courage to get honest feedback. I think I'm a little bit nervous to get honest feedbacks from some people because I know I've worked so hard on certain things that I'm doing that if I get feedback that I need to change a lot of it, then that scares me that I have to put a lot of extra hard work in. So I know I need to take that lesson as well to be around people who scare you so they can elevate you in that particular area of your life, even if it means making a drastic change. And he practices what he preaches in this. He went and worked out with a guy named Rich Froning, who was like I can't remember how many times in a row, 3, 4, 5 time in a row CrossFit champion, which named him the fittest man in the world. So an absolute badass in terms of the fitness space. And he worked out with him and challenged himself in a different way in terms of working out. And if you've ever seen Michael work out, he's an absolute stud, but Rich Froning brought him to a whole new level. So that's a way that he practices what he preaches. And I think that being around people who scare you raises your temperature, raises your ability level, raises your knowledge level in that particular area just by simply being around them, listening to them, and hearing their feedback. So make sure you're around people who scare you in areas of your life that you want to elevate in. Number 2 is that you define who you are. And the name of the episode was How to Define Yourself, because Michael talks so much about that. He talked about self-image, and I know Michael right now, he's working with a mindset coach to really get a finger on who he is and what his particular why is, down to a science so that he can continually be motivated to work as hard as he works. He was like, I'm not defined by my number of Instagram followers, my number of Twitter followers, my wins, my losses, the sponsorships. None of that crap is what defines him. It's the lasting things, the relationships, how he serves his wife, how he serves his child, his mental toughness, how he views himself, his personal decisions, following through with the promises that he makes to himself. All these lasting things are the things that he says defines who he is as a person. And if MMA fighting was taken from him tomorrow, that he would still be all right and he would still be able to make it, and have a good view of himself because he's not completely tying who he is and his self-image onto his job. And I think that is really hard for a lot of us to do because we define so closely sometimes with whatever our role is in life, whether it could be a mother, whether it's a father, or whatever your job role is. We define so closely with that when that changes, sometimes it can be really tough. So if any mothers out there, like if you see yourself like as 100% as a mother and then you become an empty nester, it's probably going to be real hard with you afterwards. So as long as you define yourself as something greater than just one particular role, I think that is really important for us. And again, that's something really easier said than done. But as long as we're focused on the things that are lasting things and things that are really tied to who we are as a person and not who we are as a role, I think that's really important. And my number 3 takeaway is failure is an event, not a person. And I really liked when he said that quote. I've heard that quote before, but he, again, practices what he preaches in that scenario where I could not believe it when I watched his fight. And he literally got knocked out like ASAP. I think maybe in like 30 seconds or so, he got knocked out in his last fight. And it was a controversial call. And the refs who were watching it, or the announcers who were watching it, talked about how it was a controversial call and it probably shouldn't have been called. But afterwards, so many fighters probably get the stereotype of being super aggressive and everything like that and would really like yell at the refs, be super mad at the end of it and be like, oh, that wasn't a knockout. Like I want back at him, that sort of thing. But Michael was like, I don't want to take away anything from him. Like he knocked me out. The match was called. Like that's how the game works. And I'm going to take meaning from this and go use it to my advantage. And that kind of brings me to a quote that I've heard before that I think is really important, that life is not about the events that happen to us, but the meaning that we take from them. Because whether you win, whether you lose, you can really find deep meaning in each one of those things. Like if you win, you can find out why you won, but you have to evaluate why you won, why you were successful, and then try to implement that again or do that again so that you can continue to be successful. If you fail, you can find the same sort of meaning in that, in the sense of like, why did you fail? Why did a particular event happen? And then find a way to reverse that and prevent yourself from losing down the road in that same sort of circumstance. So again, guys, my 3 takeaways. Number 1 is be around people who scare you. I just realized that all of these 3 things are lessons that he said, and I can pick out very particular times in his life where he practices what he preaches, because that's really important for everybody out there who is a mentor or you look up to somebody. You got to make sure they practice what they preach before you follow them too closely, to make sure that their words are authentic and that they actually know what they're talking about. So back to the 3 takeaways. Number 1 is be around people who scare you. They're going to raise your temperature just by simply being around them, being associated by and being associated with them. So make sure you have the courage to ask for honest feedback and to be around people who are going to elevate your game. And again, he practices what he preached in terms of he was around Rich Froning and working out and really pushed him to the next level. Number 2 is you define who you are. He talked about this so much during the interview, which is why that was the name of the podcast. And he talked about how it's not the Instagram followers, it's not the wins or losses who have defined him. It's the lasting things. It's how he serves his wife, how he serves his son, who he is, how he follows through with the promises that he makes to himself. And again, he practices what he preaches in the sense that he talks about how MMA does not define him. The wins, the losses, those don't define him. If the sport was taken from him tomorrow, he would still be the same man. Number 3 is failure is an event, not a person. Make sure that it's not the events that happen to you in life, it's the meaning that you take from them. So anytime there's maybe a negative thing or even a positive thing, really define what the meaning is from that particular event so that you can move on in a positive manner. And again, he practices what he preaches in terms of after that loss, he was like, you know what, I'm going to use this to my advantage. I'm going to figure out what happened and I'm going to go make this right. So I hope you guys enjoyed this 3 takeaways episode. Hope you enjoyed the Michael Chandler interview. If you didn't listen to it yet, I hope those 3 takeaways inspired you, motivated you to go back and listen to it, because it was an awesome interview with Michael, and I really appreciate him doing that and sitting down for that live event with me. Again, if you liked it, make sure you leave a rating and review. I hope something here today helps you get closer and closer to your best you.